Nation. We're at Glaswerks DMV in the Washington, D.C. area where they just completed the DYNOprism install on my Mark V Supra. And I'm sitting here with Adrian Mallory, the owner of Glaswerks DMV. And what is PPF? Why would somebody want to use it?
Paint protection film is a layer of protection for your paint work. But the biggest reason why anybody would want to get paint protection film is just to reduce the likelihood of damage to the vehicle, whether that's rock chips, abrasion when you come into contact with stuff. Most paint protection films are self-healing on the market these days. Some paint protection films have a ceramic-like top coat, which Stek has, called hydrophobe. Kind of acts like a ceramic coating, makes it a lot easier to clean and maintain.
So I love to think about PPF as just like a screen protector for your phone, but the car version, if that makes any sense, because you know, your phone, yeah, you get rid of it maybe every couple years, but your car, if you're gonna keep it for at least 3 to forever years, right? It's a really good way to protect your investment from rock chips and et cetera. It's a really big savings on, you know, just your time and your investment into a vehicle that you really care about. Is this like a good investment for somebody who's buying like a entry-level kind of sports car to, you know, super high-end? Like what makes sense from a PPF standpoint to really put on your car?
Pretty much every situation, vehicle and owner, you could make a strong case for paint protection film as an investment into protecting the vehicle. We see everything from basic daily drivers that get driven, 30,000 miles a year, like my truck, for instance, all the way up to, 7-figure supercars and beyond. On every single level, there's a reason why they did PPF. A lot of times, the initial cost to do the paint protection film easily comes back to you the first time you scratch it against the side of a garage or, brush up against another car, and all of a sudden, you don't have to paint your quarter panel that would normally be thousands of dollars to paint. I don't really think there's many instances where paint protection film doesn't make sense.
And if somebody has had a car for a while, is it too late to put PPF on it? Or is this something that you can only do when you buy a brand new car from a dealership?
We get asked that a lot. It really comes down to the condition of the vehicle and if it makes sense. So some things to think about when you're talking to a shop like ours or any other shop in the United States or anywhere really, is it's always going to be more cost effective to do it when it's brand new. Because from our standpoint, we don't have to spend nearly as much time getting the vehicle ready to apply film versus lately they're coming out of the woodwork, but we're seeing these 991.2 GT3 Tourings come out of collections with like 2,000 miles on them and no film. And you're looking at the car going like, who would have not put film on this? And then the answer to that is like, they're not ever getting driven. It was a collection. Now, the second owner, they're buying it to drive it and enjoy and experience it. Now we put PPF. Maybe there's 1 or 2 little rock chips. Maybe there's 1 or 2 little things, but most of that can be corrected prior to the application of paint protection film. But it really is on a case-by-case basis for slightly or gently used vehicles.
You mentioned earlier to me that the installer is like the most important part. We love Stek material, but it really has to be installed by the right person for it to be its best version of itself. So how do you differentiate yourself from other installers or maybe a dealership that could install PPF, while you're getting that new car?
I think what you're asking is like what the real differences are, and that is the installers. Are these guys that went to like a 3M or Expel training course for 5 days and now all of a sudden they're quote unquote an installer? Or are these seasoned veterans that have been doing this for 3, 5, 7, 14 years that really know the ins and outs of the vehicles they're working on and really know how to install the film in a manner that means it's going to last the longest without any kind of defects or corners popping up or edges lifting? One of the big things that, we talk about in our shop is for a normal type of installation, a non-color change, we're not gluing edges. And a lot of companies do that. And it's kind of a crutch for installers that maybe don't have the best ability to read the film while they're installing to get edges to be happy and stuff. If that stays on the car for a few years, you go to remove it. I mean, we've seen it lift paint before, and that's just not how we like to do it, because the way we look at it, whether it's your Supra or, $1 million Ferrari, we look at it as there's a chance we might have to replace a piece of film on this car. And if there was any possible way to damage the car while doing that, we wouldn't be able to be in business. We're not a fly-by-night shop that's been here for 2 years. This is our 6th year at this location, over 10 years in the industry. And 99% of our clients end up being lifetime clients, multiple cars, and then their friends buy cars and the cycle continues.
When does it make sense for somebody to do just a front end versus the whole car? And then kind of what's the typical cost of getting PPF installed on a vehicle, either the half or the full?
So we divide our installs into 3 different levels. Essentially, you have a front end, you have what's called a driver's package, which is a front end plus all the impact areas for vehicles that get driven aggressively. And then you have just simply a whole car. As far as what makes sense for you, the owner, obviously in a perfect world, we'd all put PPF on the whole car every single time. But that might not make sense from a cost standpoint. For the regular daily driver, I think just doing the front end is going to be sufficient. For your Supra, for instance, if it wouldn't have been a fashion film, we've never just done a front end on a Supra. It's always the driver's package, because if you look at it, you've got these kickouts and this bodywork that just takes a beating if you actually drive the car as intended, right? And then obviously a full car is pretty self-explanatory. The customer that's doing the full car really wants like the ultimate peace of mind that all the paintwork is covered. He doesn't have to worry about getting a rock chip on his wing, because oddly enough, I've seen that happen. That's kind of the breakdown there. So more daily drivers or front end. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't do a full car if it's a daily driver. We have lots of clients that do that just for the peace of mind. Front ends in cars and all the work really varies depending on the size of the vehicle, the complexity of the vehicle, and the amount of material that we need to use. If this was an Escalade, a front end on an Escalade's probably going to run about $4,000 because it's so much more film. It might not necessarily be harder to install. The example of your Supra here, a front end on this thing would be about $3,000. Then for a whole car, your Supra, in this film would be between 7 and 8, like retail, if you're going to do the whole car. And this combination kit and custom, which, covering a full-size vehicle, that's 2 rolls of film to cover. Realistically, you're probably easily over $10,000 to cover a vehicle like that. And then if you combine that size with complexity, let's say a Lamborghini Urus, where, the door has 4 different pieces of film on it as opposed to just one door, you can easily climb up the ladder of cost pretty quickly with that.
Adrian, I'm super grateful for your team putting the Stek DYNOprism on the Supra. It looks incredible. It matches my other 2 drift cars, which is awesome. I think working with someone like yourself, you really can see the attention to detail that has been put into the PPF install. And that is really what separates you from a lot of your competition is, you're wrapping the corners, you're doing everything that you need to make sure this is a one and done, right? This should last 10 years based on the warranty versus if you have maybe a not so great installer, someone that's just going to be cheap and slap it on there. If you have to redo it in 2 or 3 years because the whole thing is just peeling up, it really defeats the whole purpose of this. And it was a really quick, timeline, right? It was, I dropped the car off and I got it back exactly like a week later, including a weekend. And so it's, 1 week of not having your car to have it protected for the next 10 years makes a lot of sense. And yeah, any final thoughts you wanted to share?
I think if you're apprehensive about paint protection film, or maybe you've called around and you're kind of shocked about the price, I really invite you to come down and actually meet us and look at some of the work firsthand and let us run you through some of the processes and procedures that we've honed over the last decade in the industry that make us who we are. We have an event coming up next weekend that's really near and dear to my heart. It's our Pups and Porsches. So we partner with a bunch of nonprofits to try to get as many animals adopted. On Saturday, November 9th from 9 to 1 here. We'll have some food vendors here, coffee vendors, but it's by far my favorite event of the year. And if you wanted to see some of our work from clear installs, color installations, custom work, some of the other things that we do that we don't really get into talking about this time, exhaust, wheels, painting brake calipers, all kinds of stuff. Every possible combination of vehicle, not just Porsches, will be there this coming weekend.
Well, thanks so much and hope you enjoyed this video and we'll see you next time.